Today we'll be talking about growing up with a mental and/or substance use disorder, prevention by targeting families.
I think engaging the children in positive life experiences. Sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking they need more services, they need more sitting down and talking about addiction. They may need the church choir. They may need an after-school activity. There are so many things that can happen to give a child a sense of agency on their own. And they get the message then that they can do something about their lives. There's an escape.
Substance abuse is a family disease, and if you don't involve families or significant others, the chance of recovery is not as great. There's a great deal of research about involving families in treatment, and that research shows that when the families are engaged, the recovery is stronger, longer lasting.
I think an important thing that we all can do is instill hope in kids that grow up in families like this. We've talked about a lot of different ways to do that, through reading, through Googling, through gathering information, through having supportive adults, but giving a kid a sense that the future can be better and there's support in the world to make that happen.
Hello, I'm Pete Gerlach. I'm the author of the Break the Cycle nonprofit website. I want to introduce you to a very complex, controversial subject that I've been studying for almost 30 years as a professional therapist and as the son of two functional alcoholics. I want to offer you a summary of my observation about the widespread stressor of addiction. Let me suggest, addiction is not a character flaw. It's not a disease. It's not a disease. It's not caused by a weak will. Addiction serves a purpose. It is to self-medicate reliably against inner pain. What is inner pain? Inner pain is unbearable combination of shame, guilt, fear or anxiety, emptiness, sadness, confusion. Those can feel overwhelming when a person is not taught at an early age how to recognize and deal with them. Most of us have inner pain from time to time. The challenge of being human is, how do we manage our inner pain? Because many people grow up in dysfunctional, low nurturance families. They're not taught how to either recognize or manage their pain. What they discover, in part because of social imprinting and examples all around us, is that addiction is a reliable medication that makes the pain go away for a while. The paradox is addiction increases inner pain, specifically shame, guilt, and hopelessness. So addiction is an automatic, unconscious reflex by people who are feeling too much inner pain. Where does this pain come from? Usually, in my experience as a veteran therapist, it comes from the early years of being raised in a low nurturance or dysfunctional family. Adults who themselves are psychologically wounded and inherited ignorance from their ancestors do their best to raise their children, but frequently they don't meet their kids' needs. And when that happens, kids accumulate inner pain. What can you do about addictions? Can you cure them? The prevailing answer is no. Can you reduce them? In my experience as a veteran therapist, the answer is yes. What's required to reduce or manage versus cure an addiction? There are several things that need to happen. First, a so-called addict, which is a code word for someone who is psychologically wounded and in great pain. The addict has to hit bottom. She or he has to wake up one morning or reach a point in the afternoon or evening that says, I cannot tolerate living like this one more moment. I am going to change. Bottoms are of two types. There are real bottoms where people do change permanently, and there are trial or pseudo bottoms where they try for a while and then they fall back into their own self-medication habits. So, the first thing that usually has to happen, there are exceptions, is a person who is self-medicating needs to hit bottom. Secondly, for a successful end, or management at least, of addictions, and there are 4 kinds of addictions, by the way, they all work the same way. The most widely known is addictions to substances, including food, by the way. Food is a drug. It alters your mood and your physiology and your hormones. People can become addicted to the process of eating and to food itself, specifically sugar and carbohydrates, because those change our bodies and our brains and give us temporary pleasure. They make the pain go down. So you can be addicted to substances. You can be addicted to activities like betting, gambling, for instance. You can be addicted to moods like rage, which feels powerful. And if you're shame-based, the last thing you've ever experienced is feeling powerful. So you can become addicted to moods, substances, activities, including shopping, for instance, or cleaning, or working out. Those can become unhealthy compulsions, which are no longer, you can't control them by willpower. That's what a compulsion is. It's action that you cannot control with mental boundaries. The last kind of addiction is addiction to a relationship. The popular name for that is codependence. It works just like the other 3 kinds of addictions. You become so focused compulsively on another person, on their welfare, on their behavior, on their appearance, on how they relate to you, that you lose sight of yourself. Alias, you forget about or minimize or numb out your inner pain. So there are 4 kinds of addictions. To begin to manage them, you have to hit bottom. The next thing, in my experience, is you need to free your true self to manage your personality. That probably will mean nothing to you unless you've studied lesson 1 in the Break the Cycle website. There are 8 lessons there in sequence. They're self-study lessons. The first lesson is how to recognize if you're ruled by a false self, which most people are, and how to free your wise, true self. In order to manage an addiction, you must do that. There are exceptions, but it makes the likelihood of, quote, recovery from addiction much higher. So, learn about your false and true selves, about psychological wounds, of which there are 6. The wounds cause your inner pain. Learn about them in lesson 1 and work to free your true self. Then you need to learn about the mechanics of addiction, which is what this brief video is attempting to summarize for you. Then you need to identify, the third step is identify specifically what is your inner pain. That's easy to say, it's hard to do. Inner pain can be a mix of, as I said, excessive shame. I'm a terrible person. I'm unlovable. I'm ugly. I'm stupid. I'm a failure. Inner shame. That starts in our first 6 years of life. Excessive guilt. I do bad things. It feels the same as shame, but it's different. Excessive fear. is a widespread, perhaps universal, cause of inner pain. I fear the unknown. I fear failure. I fear intimacy. I fear success. I fear fear. I fear relationships. I fear taking risks. So that's a source of inner pain. Another source of inner pain, which is a little more difficult to recognize, is reality distortion. Another way we manage inner pain is to distort reality, to reduce our discomfort. The primary example is denial. What? Inner pain? I don't have any inner pain. Oh, yes, you do. The signs are unmistakable. So identify specifically your inner pain. Identify what promotes your inner pain. Frequently, that has to do with your childhood. If you do what's called in Lesson 1 parts work, you can identify the personality subcells that bring you each one of these sources of pain. And over time, with respect and patience and help and creativity, you can reduce each one of these sources of pain. When you do that, your need to self-medicate goes down. The last thing you need to do, in addition to hitting bottom, freeing yourself, and reducing your inner pain proactively and intentionally, the last thing you need to do is identify if you're living in a low nurturance or pain-promoting environment. You need to change your environment and get into one which promotes healthy living and healthy pain management. Frequently, that means you have to reorganize your relations with your dysfunctional family members and or spouse. This is a very complicated process. I'm not going to begin to cover how to do that in this brief video. What I hope you'll come away with in watching me right now is addiction is not a disease. It is not a character flaw. It is an unconscious attempt to medicate inner pain. It is not subject to willpower because the inner pain dominates. Addiction can be reduced once you're aware of what causes inner pain, how to reduce it, how to manage it, and how to seek a more healthy, functional environment after you hit bottom. There are many, many other things to know about individual addictions, including physiological effects, about family interventions, because addiction, in the bottom line, addiction is a family problem, not an individual problem. Yes, of course, individuals suffer from addictions, but really, addiction is an indication of major family dysfunction. That's why clinically it's useful to have family therapy with one or more clinicians who are familiar with the dynamics and causes and effects of, quote, addiction, unquote. So I hope, in case you are addicted or you may be addicted, or you care deeply for someone who is addicted, an adult or a child, you will look first to see what kind of a family they came from or they are in now. Secondly, you will study Lesson 1 to learn about true selves and false selves and psychological wounds that we inherit from our ancestors. Then I hope you will study the several different articles in Lesson 1 and Lesson 5, which has to do with families, about how to specifically take effective steps to reduce addictions. It can be done. I hope you find this concept mentally stimulating and challenging. I hope you study more about it. I hope you study Lesson 1 through 6 or 7 in this website to make your life significantly better and give your children the best chance they can have towards not inheriting the toxic psychological wounds plus unawareness cycle that's degrading our society. Thanks for watching.